In the shadowy corners of human consciousness, ancient creatures have always lurked. From the depths of primordial seas to the darkened forests of our collective imagination, beings like werewolves, dogmen, kraken, and even dinosaurs have captivated humanity across millennia. These creatures, born in mythology yet persisting into our scientific age, represent the enduring dialogue between our ancestral fears and our modern understanding of the world. This video explores how these ancient entities continue to inhabit our modern times, not merely as relics of superstition, but as evolving symbols that reflect our changing relationship with the unknown, the wilderness, and ultimately, ourselves. The creatures that haunt our modern imagination have deep roots in ancient folklore. Werewolves, humans who transform into wolf-like beasts under the full moon, appear in traditions spanning from ancient Greece to Nordic sagas. The lycanthrope myth dates back to at least the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the goddess Ishtar transforms a shepherd into a wolf. In medieval Europe, werewolf trials paralleled witch hunts, with accused individuals facing torture and execution. The concept of the dogman, a bipedal canine creature, shares similarities with Egyptian deity Anubis and various Native American skinwalker legends. These traditions often portrayed shapeshifters as spiritual entities or shamans capable of assuming animal form through sacred or forbidden rituals. Meanwhile, the kraken emerged from Scandinavian maritime folklore as a tentacled sea monster capable of dragging entire ships into the abyss. Norse sagas described the creature as dwelling off the coasts of Norway and Iceland, creating whirlpools to trap passing vessels. Similar sea monsters appear across cultures: the Greek Scylla, the Japanese Umibozu, and the Maori Taniwa, suggesting a universal human anxiety about the ocean's unknown depths. Even dinosaurs, though scientifically documented, existed in mythology before their scientific discovery, with dragon legends potentially inspired by fossilized remains discovered by ancient peoples. Chinese dragon bones, used in traditional medicine, were later identified as dinosaur fossils, while griffins may have been inspired by protoceratops remains found in Central Asian gold mines. These creatures served crucial symbolic functions in pre-modern societies. Werewolves embodied humanity's struggle with its wild nature, the tension between civilization and bestial impulses. They also reflected anxieties about community infiltration, with the wolf in human clothing serving as a metaphor for disguised threats within tight-knit societies. Sea monsters like the kraken represented the terrifying unknown beneath the waves, a manifestation of the dangers faced by seafaring communities whose livelihoods depended on navigating treacherous waters. These beings often marked the boundaries of known territory on medieval maps with annotations like "Here be monsters," serving as symbolic guardians of the threshold between the known and unknown. As humanity progressed through the Enlightenment and into the age of science, these beings didn't disappear. They transformed. The 19th century saw werewolf folklore recast through the lens of emerging psychiatric understanding, with lycanthropy reinterpreted as a form of mental illness rather than supernatural transformation. The 1941 film The Wolf Man cemented modern werewolf mythology with elements like silver bullets and full moon transformations, demonstrating how ancient creatures adapt to new cultural contexts. Today's werewolf narratives often explore themes of identity and the beast within, while modern kraken stories reflect environmental anxieties about the unexplored ocean depths. Dinosaurs, once mythological dragons, now serve as powerful reminders of extinction and evolutionary change, particularly relevant in an era of climate crisis and biodiversity loss. Despite living in an era of unprecedented scientific knowledge, eyewitness accounts of encounters with these creatures persist with remarkable consistency. The Beast of Bray Road incidents in Wisconsin during the 1980s and 1990s featured multiple witnesses describing encounters with a wolf-like bipedal creature matching traditional dogman descriptions. Linda Godfrey, a journalist who initially investigated these sightings, documented dozens of testimonies from credible witnesses, including police officers, teachers, and other professionals with no apparent motive to fabricate such encounters. Michigan's dogman sightings have continued for decades, often clustering around the same geographical regions, with reports spiking every 7 years according to local folklore. The Pacific Northwest maintains its tradition of Sasquatch sightings, with many witnesses describing creatures that share characteristics with dogmen, suggesting either related phenomena or cultural cross-pollination of folklore. Meanwhile, unexplained oceanic phenomena, massive underwater shapes detected on sonar, mysterious disappearances of marine vessels, and unidentified carcasses washing ashore keep kraken mythology alive. The famous bloop sound recorded by NOAA hydrophones in 1997 initially puzzled scientists with its organic characteristics and extreme volume before being attributed to ice quakes. Such ambiguous phenomena provide fertile ground for modern sea monster theories. These modern accounts share striking similarities across geographical and cultural boundaries. Witnesses of dogmen and werewolf-like creatures consistently describe upright posture, glowing eyes, and an overwhelming sense of dread that precedes encounters. Many report a feeling of being watched before the sighting, followed by unusual animal behavior such as dogs displaying extreme fear or agitation. The ubiquity of smartphones has changed the documentation landscape, with purported video evidence circulating widely on social media platforms and specialized forums dedicated to cryptid encounters. While skeptics point to the ease of digital manipulation, believers highlight the volume and consistency of reports as evidence supporting the existence of these creatures. The transmission of these accounts has evolved dramatically in the digital age. Where once local legends might remain geographically contained, internet communities now facilitate global sharing of experiences, allowing witnesses to find validation among similarly affected individuals across vast distances. This connectivity has both advantages and drawbacks for cryptid research. While it enables pattern recognition across diverse reports, it also facilitates cross-contamination of details through exposure to existing accounts. Television programs like Monster Quest and Finding Bigfoot have further popularized these phenomena, sometimes sensationalizing accounts while simultaneously bringing them into mainstream discourse. Cryptozoology, the study of hidden or undiscovered animals, exists in the contested space between folklore and zoology. While mainstream science dismisses many cryptid claims, the regular discovery of species previously thought extinct or unknown gives cryptozoologists reason for optimism. The coelacanth, a prehistoric fish discovered alive in 1938 after supposedly being extinct for 65 million years, serves as the field's most cited example. Similarly, the megamouth shark, first discovered in 1976, and the saola, Asian unicorn, confirmed in 1992, demonstrate that large vertebrates can indeed escape scientific detection until relatively recently. Some cryptozoologists suggest that reported dogmen could represent undiscovered primate species, perhaps related to known extinct hominids like Gigantopithecus blacki, a massive ape that stood 10 feet tall and coexisted with early humans in Asia. Others propose that werewolf and dogman sightings might result from misidentification of known animals with unusual conditions, such as bears suffering from mange or wolves with genetic abnormalities. Zoologist Carl Schuker and others have suggested the possibility of relict populations of prehistoric canids, like Amphision, the bear dog that went extinct approximately 9 million years ago but possessed both canine features and the ability to walk upright for short distances. Similarly, some cryptozoologists propose that kraken sightings might be encounters with giant squid, which remained scientifically undocumented living specimens until 2004 despite reaching lengths of up to 43 feet. The even larger colossal squid, first photographed alive in its natural habitat in 2012, demonstrates that massive cephalopods do indeed inhabit deep ocean environments. Marine biologists acknowledge that the deep sea remains one of Earth's least explored environments, with new species discovered regularly below 200 meters. This scientific frontier leaves open the possibility, however remote, of undiscovered marine megafauna. The scientific community generally maintains that large, undiscovered terrestrial mammals in well-explored regions are highly improbable. Ecologists point to constraints in food supply, habitat requirements, and reproductive population sizes that would make undetected large predators nearly impossible in North America or Europe. The extensive human development, trail camera networks, satellite imagery, and hunting pressure in these regions would likely have yielded definitive evidence if such creatures existed. Yet the vastness of the ocean, with approximately 80% remaining unexplored, offers more plausible sanctuary for unknown creatures. The periodic discovery of new whale and shark species suggests oceans could indeed harbor surprises, if not necessarily mythological sea monsters. As for dinosaurs surviving into modern times, paleontologists categorically reject this possibility for non-avian dinosaurs. The Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event 66 million years ago left a distinct geological signature worldwide, with no fossil evidence of non-avian dinosaurs after this boundary. However, scientifically speaking, birds are technically dinosaurs, the surviving lineage of theropod dinosaurs that evolved into today's avian species. This scientific reality offers an interesting perspective. We live among dinosaurs daily, just not the kinds typically imagined in cryptid reports. Reports of living dinosaurs in remote areas like the Congo Basin, Mokele Mbembe, or Papua New Guinea more likely represent misidentifications of known animals, cultural memories preserved in folklore, or deliberate hoaxes. The persistence of belief in ancient creatures reveals much about human psychology. Our brains evolved to identify patterns and potential threats, sometimes generating false positives, seeing faces in random patterns or interpreting ambiguous stimuli as threatening. This pareidolia, combined with confirmation bias, can transform mundane encounters with known animals into seemingly supernatural experiences. Evolutionary psychologists suggest this hyperactive agency detection, the tendency to attribute ambiguous phenomena to intentional agents, offered survival advantages to our ancestors, as mistaking a rustle in the bushes for a predator carried less evolutionary cost than failing to detect an actual threat. Sleep paralysis offers another psychological explanation for some creature encounters. This phenomenon, characterized by wakefulness with physical immobility and often accompanied by hallucinations, frequently manifests as a sensed presence or visible entity in the room. The experience has been linked to traditional beliefs like the old hag in Newfoundland or the kanashibari in Japan, nocturnal visitations that share features with modern werewolf and dogman encounters. Additionally, the campfire effect, whereby stories gain details and intensity as they spread through communities, amplifies initial reports into full-fledged monster sightings, particularly in isolated communities where shared beliefs reinforce individual experiences. These creatures maintain cultural resonance because they serve vital psychological functions. Werewolves and dogmen embody our ambivalence about civilization versus wilderness, the tension between human rationality and primal instincts. In a highly structured modern society, these creatures represent both the fear of and desire for freedom from social constraints. Sea monsters like the kraken represent our fear of the unseen depths, both literal oceans and the metaphorical unconscious mind with its hidden impulses and motivations. Dinosaurs fascinate us as reminders of Earth's deep history and mortality on a planetary scale, offering perspective on humanity's brief existence and potential impermanence. In indigenous communities, these creatures often retain ceremonial significance beyond mere folklore. Many Native American traditions view skinwalkers and similar entities as real spiritual beings, with profound connections to tribal cosmology and ethics. For these communities, ancient creatures aren't separated from scientific understanding, but integrated into holistic worldviews that don't privilege Western epistemological frameworks. Meanwhile, in mainstream culture, these beings populate our entertainment as metaphors for contemporary anxieties about identity, technology, and environmental change. The werewolf transformation sequence in modern cinema, with its focus on painful physical metamorphosis, reflects anxieties about bodily integrity in an age of genetic engineering and transhumanism. The economic impact of these beliefs is also significant. Cryptid tourism generates substantial revenue for communities associated with famous creatures. Loch Ness attracts approximately 400,000 visitors annually seeking its monster, while Whitehall, New York celebrates its local dogman with an annual festival. The film industry has produced countless werewolf movies, from The Wolfman to An American Werewolf in London to the Twilight franchise, each reflecting their era's particular concerns. Video games featuring kraken-like creatures tap into deep-sea anxieties, while the Jurassic Park franchise has generated billions by reimagining dinosaurs in modern settings. These economic incentives further propagate interest in and belief in ancient creatures, creating feedback loops between commercial interests and popular fascination. The technological evolution of the past century has transformed how we document and investigate reports of ancient creatures in modern contexts. Trail cameras, drones, thermal imaging, and satellite photography have revolutionized wildlife monitoring. Yet paradoxically, definitive evidence of cryptids remains elusive. This evidence gap presents what skeptics consider the strongest argument against their existence. In an age of ubiquitous surveillance, how could large unknown creatures remain undocumented? Proponents of cryptid research counter that technological detection has limitations. Trail cameras cover minimal territory, typically placed in locations selected for known wildlife patterns, rather than optimized for capturing unknown species. Environmental DNA, eDNA sampling, which detects genetic material shed by organisms into their environment, offers promising new avenues for cryptid investigation, but requires comparison against existing genetic databases, limiting its utility for truly unknown species. Furthermore, remote wilderness areas like portions of the Pacific Northwest, the Canadian forests, or deep ocean trenches remain relatively inaccessible to continuous monitoring. The standards of evidence present another challenge. Cryptozoology occupies an uncomfortable position between folklore studies and zoology, with unclear criteria for what constitutes sufficient proof. Zoologists require physical specimens, DNA evidence, or unambiguous photographic documentation to confirm new species. By contrast, cryptid researchers often work with eyewitness testimony, ambiguous photographic evidence, and circumstantial indications like unexplained sounds or tracks. This methodological divide creates an epistemological impasse where evidence considered compelling by cryptid enthusiasts fails to meet scientific standards, while scientific standards may be impractical for documenting elusive creatures that may exist in extremely low population densities. The proliferation of digital technologies has simultaneously made documentation easier and verification harder. Smartphone cameras have democratized cryptid documentation, allowing anyone to potentially capture evidence. However, the same technological revolution has made image and video manipulation increasingly sophisticated and accessible, creating a paradox where visual evidence becomes simultaneously more abundant and less trustworthy. This technological arms race between documentation and skepticism has shifted the burden of proof increasingly toward extraordinary standards, with some critics arguing that nothing short of a physical specimen would now suffice as evidence. The appearance of similar creature archetypes across disparate cultures suggests either universal psychological patterns or possibly encounters with actual phenomena interpreted through cultural lenses. Werewolf-like beings appear not just in European traditions, but in the skinwalker legends of Navajo culture, the Nahual of Mesoamerican beliefs, and the Rougarou of Cajun folklore. These cross-cultural similarities extend to specific details. Many traditions associate these transformations with lunar cycles, emphasize the retention of human intelligence within animal form, and prescribe similar methods for identifying or neutralizing the creatures. Sea monster traditions show even more remarkable consistency across isolated maritime cultures. From the Norse kraken to the Maori taniwa, the Greek charybdis to the Japanese umibozu, civilizations separated by vast distances and minimal contact developed strikingly similar legends of massive tentacled or serpentine creatures capable of dragging ships beneath the waves. These commonalities could reflect shared human anxieties about the sea, independent encounters with similar natural phenomena, like giant squid or whale pods, or possibly cultural diffusion through ancient maritime trade networks more extensive than previously recognized. Indigenous perspectives on these creatures often differ fundamentally from Western cryptozoological approaches. Many Native American traditions view entities like dogmen not as biological anomalies awaiting scientific classification, but as beings that exist simultaneously in physical and spiritual realms. For instance, the Algonquian Wendigo is understood as both a physical cannibal and a manifestation of spiritual corruption brought about by greed. This ontological framework challenges Western categorization of creatures as either real, biological, or mythical, imaginary, instead positioning them within complex cosmologies where the boundaries between physical and spiritual realities remain permeable. Global investigation of these phenomena reveals intriguing regional variations. European werewolf traditions emphasize involuntary transformation often tied to curses or heredity, while African shapeshifter legends more frequently feature voluntary transformation as a manifestation of spiritual power. Asian dragon traditions often portray these serpentine creatures as benevolent water deities controlling rainfall, while Western dragons typically represent destructive forces to be conquered. These variations reflect different cultural relationships with wilderness, different spiritual traditions, and different environmental conditions, demonstrating how ancient creatures adapt to cultural contexts while maintaining core archetypal features. The field of cryptid investigation continues to evolve, with emerging technologies offering new possibilities for research. The Sasquatch Genome Project, though widely criticized in mainstream science, represents an attempt to apply genomic analysis to alleged cryptid samples. Such approaches, despite their current limitations, point toward increasing integration of cutting-edge biological techniques in cryptid research. Computational approaches offer another promising avenue. Pattern recognition algorithms applied to historical sighting databases can identify geographic and temporal clusters that might reveal meaningful patterns in creature encounters. Geographic Information System, GIS, mapping of sightings against environmental variables, human population density, and known wildlife ranges may yield insights into potential habitat requirements for cryptids, or alternatively reveal correlations that support psychological or sociological explanations for sighting clusters. Machine learning analysis of purported cryptid photographs can help establish objective criteria for distinguishing potential genuine anomalies from misidentifications or hoaxes. Interdisciplinary approaches represent perhaps the most promising direction for future research. Collaborative teams, including wildlife biologists, anthropologists, psychologists, indigenous knowledge keepers, and folklorists, can approach these phenomena from multiple perspectives simultaneously. Such collaborations avoid the false dichotomy between believers and skeptics, instead focusing on understanding the complex interrelationship between cultural traditions, psychological factors, biological possibilities, and human experience that together constitute the cryptid phenomenon. Regardless of whether creatures like werewolves, dogmen, or sea monsters exist in biological reality, they undoubtedly exist as powerful cultural phenomena worthy of serious scholarly attention. Their persistence across millennia and continued evolution in the modern imagination reveals something fundamental about human cognition, our relationship with the natural world, and our need to populate the unknown with meaningful entities. In this sense, ancient creatures in modern times serve as mirrors reflecting our evolving understanding of ourselves at the intersection of nature and culture, science and mythology, rationality and mystery. Ancient creatures persist in modern times, not despite our scientific advances, but in conversation with them. As we map the human genome and explore distant planets, these beings inhabit the diminishing territories of the unknown, the unmapped ocean floor, the remote wilderness, or the unexplained experience. Whether understood as literal entities awaiting discovery, psychological projections, or cultural metaphors, werewolves, dogmen, kraken, and dinosaurs continue to prowl the boundaries of our understanding. This persistence speaks to something fundamental about the human experience: our need to populate the unknown with coherent, if frightening, entities. There is perhaps greater comfort in a world with monsters than in one with formless, nameless threats. Our ancestors painted cave walls with the creatures that haunted their dreams and stalked their hunting grounds. We create digital representations of similar beings in our films and games. This continuity suggests that monster making serves an essential psychological function, providing form to our fears and embodiment to our existential uncertainties. The scientific and technological developments of our age have not banished these creatures, but transformed them. Rather than viewing modern reports of these creatures as simple continuation of ancient superstitions, we might better understand them as ongoing negotiations between human psychology and changing external realities. As we continue advancing scientifically, these creatures will likely evolve rather than vanish. transforming to embody new social anxieties and cultural preoccupations. In this way, ancient creatures remain thoroughly modern, reflecting not just what we fear, but how we understand our relationship with the natural world and with the persistent mysteries that continue to elude our complete comprehension. The werewolf, dogman, kraken, and dinosaur, whether stalking our forests, lurking in our oceans, or existing only in our collective imagination, remain powerful symbols of humanity's enduring fascination with the boundaries between known and unknown, human and animal, science and mystery. Their footprints across human history and culture mark not just a trail into our past, but pathways into our future understanding of ourselves and our place in a world that remains, despite our technological achievements, wonderfully and terrifyingly mysterious.